Hey guys, after a really long time, we are doing this again. This time I'll be working on the AI, and if you guys are following along, I would suggest you don't actually follow along what I'm doing on this episode because, as you will find out, I screw a lot of things up to such a massive level that I have to start over. So I start off with just creating a child of the main character, child blueprint of the main character, and then I move on to building some basic logic on a behavior tree just so that it can move. The random location is one of the easiest and quickest ways to like get something up and running, and roaming is usually a function that's pretty much widely available for almost all AI characters. Um, what I found throughout the entire experience was that there's three basic systems that are there inside Unreal that we need to use in order to you know build some seriously powerful AIs. The first is the behavior tree system, which is basically where you start to give them the ability to make their own decisions based on some sort of variables or whatever it is. Then there is the environmental query system, which is the second system that allows the AI to actually see what's happening around it in the world, right? And the final of all these three systems is the what do you call it? Not the behavior tree. Perception, AI perception. So the thing about AI perception is there's a couple of bugs that are there, or not bugs, it's just I guess the features are not fully implemented in Blueprint. So right now, by the way, I think that's something that I need to add. I'm doing all of the AI stuff in Blueprint simply because I can just like throw it down there, like debug it real quick, and then figure out if it's actually giving me the kind of behavior that I'm actually looking for. So, and then once I'm done with that, I'll just go build it in C++. So, in general, I feel like what I managed to achieve here was just to get a grasp of what exactly the AI system is supposed to do and how it's supposed to work. So right now I'm trying to set up the perception so that if it perceives something, you get a bool and then it starts following you around. So follow mechanic was next. It's kind of cheap. You'd be able to find 1.5 million tutorials all over the internet that would actually give you a significantly better version of what I have done over here than what I've done here. But it's one of those things that you really do need to nail down all the way in the beginning, just so that you know that the basic movement and these kind of stuff is actually working. So in this adventure, what I needed to be able to do is the AI needed to be able to pick its own stuff up. It needed to be able to go get health if it needed it. I wanted to cover that full spectrum of stuff. Oh, it saw a player. Now what does it do? Like, do I attack? Do I run? Like, I wanted to include all of that logic in this. But then the way that I've set this up from the beginning itself, it wasn't that robust. So there's three main interactions over here, which is understanding its allies, understanding its friends, and then understanding its environment. And for that, I did a lot of that work using the EQS. But in this instance, it's pretty much just like throwing a lot of things together so that they can go pick weapons up and start shooting as well, right? So I think at this point, I'm starting to look at how to get them to start picking up a gun and setting the armed setting, that the armed variable inside, so that once they're armed, the things that they do switch to a different tree altogether, right? But rather than going to a absolutely different tree, what I've done over here is I've just pretty much included it within the main tree per se. And first find a weapon, move to it, and currently the inventory is such that once you move on to something, it picks it up. I change this as I go along, simply because I felt like that walking into things and picking them up might get a little bit annoying. So I went down the alternate route of just walking over things, pressing a button to pick it up, instead of going down the other route. But yeah, so fundamentally the guy is capable of now roaming around, detecting the player, detecting whether the guy has a weapon or not, and if it doesn't, it figures out how exactly to go do that. But the code over here is really messy. It actually is quite a bit of a disaster to debug and actually read through, but that was pretty much what led me down the final path. So why exactly am I putting this completely useless video up? Because nothing in this can be actually used. because I wanted to show you guys just how easy it is to mess something up without good planning. So when I started off building this AI, I did not really understand what I wanted done. So what I ended up with is a lot of mixed ideas in a place without any proper direction. Also, it goes back towards what I was building earlier as well, right? The inventory, the gun, picking that sort of stuff up. So over here, I'm trying to deal with this left flank, right flank thing. I'll get to that later as well. That's formations. It's a thing that I want to build in, and I was trying to beat my head over how exactly you figure out who I should be following out there. But back to what I was saying. The entire point of this video is to understand that if you don't have a good foundation, everything starts to break apart. For example, the gun system is truly a mess, right? It's not a child of the inventory system, even though it absolutely has to be, right? So if we have pickup logic and drop logic for weapons, which you would in this instance, with the way that I'm trying to build this, you would need to be able to switch out. You need to be able to drop the weapon as well, but that was not a functionality that was built in. Whereas inventory related stuff, so things that are not pickups, like if there is an item that you can pick up and put somewhere else, those stuff you need to be able to drop that stuff. And I actually start to build that in a completely different system when I start brand new. Then there was the entire problem of, now that the AI can pick it up, the way that I had coded the ammunition and how much ammo a person has was very heavily dependent on it being the player instead of actually just any entity that can pick up a gun. So the code wasn't wide enough. It was too specific, so I had to recode a lot of things by hand. And the shitty part is I was a bit stubborn in terms of generally too stubborn for my own good, because I really should have taken the time to understand that what I was building here was completely broken from the beginning itself. But trying to, like, for example, this entire rank system that I'm currently building on screen now, this thing is a complete disaster, right? Because what I'm trying to do over there is I'm trying to ask, there's another character, what is their rank, and is that rank higher than mine? And that normally would work, but it didn't really perform the way that I thought it was supposed to perform. It did something completely else. Some of those variables I really couldn't access, and it was somewhere around this time that I genuinely started to get a better grasp of what's happening over here, which is that if you go into the forums and start reading as to what are the things that how people who are actually commercially building games and commercially building games on Unreal are handling AI, you'd see that very few of them actually stick to blueprints in the long run. They pretty much switch over to writing everything in C++, because most of the functionality that we really require, not really require, that is pretty much considered normal for a third-person shooter, I guess, is not really accessible. And anyway, when you are getting into game development, it's something that you really have to understand. All these tools, yeah, they're great for building smaller stuff, but if you're actually going into the realm of, we need to get this to production quality, it's very rare that you are capable of handling major systems with Blueprint. It's anyway ill-advised. You can get so much more efficiencies if you simply switch over to C++. So one part of this entire gig is to make sure that, so right now with the way that it's currently built, I can have maybe like about 10-12 characters on screen. They don't really have a lot of logic going on, but it's not too efficient. You can see it tanking a tad bit. I mean, you can see some frames dropping, and my PC is like 5 years old, but it's still no slouch. It's got a 1080 Ti and a i7 from many years ago, so it really shouldn't be dying. But then, right, here is where I finally give up and understand, you know what, I fucked that one up royally. I need to fix this shit, and in order to do that, I really need to start from the beginning. So rather than going straight into thinking about the AI architecture in Unreal, I decided to switch over to something like Lucidchart. But then halfway through that, I realized, hey, but I'm not particularly sure how exactly different systems are supposed to work with each other. So what am I supposed to be doing over here? What I basically ended up doing after taking, I think, a couple of minutes break and thinking about this and reading up on what people are doing is that, you know what, fucking nuke everything and start all over again. So now I'm trying to generalize the code a little bit more while I'm writing it. But generally, though, it was part of the process simply because I was not very well. It's been many years since I've coded an AI, and even to a large degree, I don't think I have coded something as complex as I'm trying to build. But you see, now what I'm doing is I'm just using the tree system, like basically the behavior tree, to block out pieces of code that I think is how they are doing it. And left to right is the priority. So someone is going to need to over there like find a gun. This is basically Soldier AI. They need to be able to have a weapon before they do anything else, right? So then they first do a weapon check. They do an environmental query around them as to, oh wait, what's there, and then they move on to all other stuff. And even the combat, I've broken it down into 3 separate sections over here. But what I have found out is that a lot of people suggest switching to a completely different behavioral tree if it comes to that, simply so that everything is a bit neater in terms of how it's managed out. Also, most of this stuff, I've read this on the forums. I don't really know how sensible it is because I haven't gone ahead and done it. But I will be able to comment on it after I have done it, and I hope you guys sit down and check it out. This stuff really is a lot of trial and error if you don't have the necessary experience. Like if you haven't done it before, obviously it's gonna take some time. So over there, that stand and guard is pretty much a section that's supposed to be, oh, you know what, that's my job as an AI. And that job section can be basically handed off to a different behavior tree, simply because each AI character, we can create behavioral tree based job profiles, right? But right now I'm just pretty much doing the roam because, hey, if you can't bloody roam, we don't really know if anything else is working. So on top of all of that, the entire animation system kind of broke, and I attempted to fix it and proceeded to make it a lot worse, which pretty much boils back down to, once again, I'm going to have to use C++ in order to build the character model from start as well. But honestly, I'm not too concerned about that right now. Performance is not really a priority simply because I don't have anything working, right? You can't optimize something that doesn't bloody exist. So first and foremost, throw things there so that at least they follow you around, they see enemies and they shoot at each other. After which, you know what, let's think about how we can have close to about 20 or 30 of them on an area without everything just exploding and dropping frames and shit like that. So this first section was done over the span of, I think, I don't know, about 6-7 hours, because I know in total it took me like about 10 hours to crack out an AI that works. And even then, I'll show you guys later, like there is some simple stuff, like for example, AI perception is, as I told you guys earlier, how the AI actually sees what's happening around it. But what has happened over here is that it's attached to just the body, right? So even though the animation shows the AI character looking left, looking right, it can't see left and right. It can't see with where its eyes are positioned. And I think that's shite. Like, it's retarded. Like, there's no point having that. That means you could literally walk past a person who's looking at you and it might not register it simply because of the fact that it's attached to a body instead of a head. So after much googling and going through the forums, there is someone who's kind enough who has created a tutorial on how to do it in C++ so that it's attached to the head, so that when they look left, look right, it actually follows along. But this is pretty interesting. This is where I first start to dig into the query system, right? What I really did feel is that a lot of these systems are independently so powerful on their own. I could pretty much build most of this stuff with just using EQS and behavioral tree. But I'm trying to use AI perception over there because the documentation says that using all 3 at the same time is the way to go about it. I'm assuming there's going to be something that's going to be happening in the future that I am not aware of yet. That's going to require all this stuff. But I found a lot of that. Like, it's quite the experience to understand just how you screwed up the code as you're building along. Like I said, the inventory system and the weapon system, and understanding, okay, so this was the functionality I originally wanted. So you know that project planning episode, it shouldn't have been one episode. It genuinely should have been like about 10 episodes where I think the entire thing through. But this isn't the first time I'm building something that I have no experience in, and what I've found is it's better to get your hands dirty quickly, because at least then you will know what you don't know. And I realized a lot of this project, I had no idea about how a lot of these systems are supposed to work together and how where we are supposed to be using them, right? Not to say that the documentation was not clear. It's just that it's good, it's okay, it's not bad, but still could be better. There could be more people who would speak about exactly how they implemented it and how and why they decided to break different systems to different technologies over here. But more or less, genuinely, there's a lot that needs to be covered in terms of how exactly where we can use the different tools that have been given. But we're going to be ending this episode. I'm going to be ending this episode shortly, and I'm glad you guys tuned in. And coming in a couple of days, I'll be putting the other episode out, which is where the stuff actually makes sense, right? Where all the different where the behavior trees and the EQS systems and the inventory system that I had to remake. I'm doing all of that. Let me know what you guys think. And also, if you guys need anything that you guys have a problem with, you want me to take a look at, just drop a message in the comments. I think I should have an email up on the channel that you can just send that stuff over to me. And overall, thanks for sitting around for this.